So when I watch these videos, one thing I sometimes wonder is, how tall is the person making the video? Because I've met many YouTubers in person, and some people were the same height I expected, but others were taller or shorter. So when I wear sneakers, I am 5'9". So that's how tall I am. Okay, so this video is about Martin Armstrong. I highly recommend reading his material. I've been reading him for several years. I find him one of the most reliable sources of analysis and so forth. Does that mean he is flawless? No. Does that mean he is my idol and hero? No. It means he has something to say, and I want to hear what he has to say. Okay. So, when I first started into the whole gold and silver thing, back before I started my channel, at first I didn't have the confidence to buy a physical metal. I mean, buying something like this, right? It's a very big change from what you're probably used to doing, or most people. Most people don't own any physical metals. I mean, most people's wealth is in an account. Nice and neat statement. You can see it on paper. It's there somewhere in the system, and that's how people are used to doing things. So in order to make a switch to buy assets that are very dense in value you can hold in your hand, you kind of got to get some kind of confidence, right? There's some pundits who gave me confidence. In fact, Stella Concepts, when I met him last year, we both discussed how guys like Bob Chapman actually gave us the confidence to buy these physical metals. Because, I mean, if no one you know does it, and everybody you know says don't do it, and you want to do it, if you have an example to go by, it's easier to do it. So a lot of people, some of these pundits really helped with buying the physical gold and silver. However, one of the reasons why they gave confidence was because they said things that all fiat currencies fail. The dollar's gonna fail. These kind of things. And then they give they put their case forward, which sounds compelling. And that helps give confidence to get out of this dollar. Now, getting out of the dollar might be the right thing to do at the right time. But as far as hyperinflation goes, for several years, Martin Armstrong said no hyperinflation in the dollar. He didn't say that it's going to be worth what it is forever. He just said no hyperinflation, and he gives historical cases. He says, I'll read from this article. I get critical responses that the way everything has to collapse is only through hyperinflation. I would love to see just one empire that has ever collapsed in such a manner. Not Babylon, Athens, Hellenistic Greece, Rome, Venice, Holy Roman Empire, or even Britain. I fail to grasp this instance upon something that historically has never happened in 6,000 years of recorded history. He's talking about the core economy, right? Of course there are examples, like people say the dollar's going to collapse. Look at Zimbabwe. Look at Weimar Germany. Look at all these other cases of hyperinflation. And they're right. Hyperinflation happens all the time, everywhere. In fact, it's what happens most of the time with fiat currencies. However, Martin Armstrong says, not in the core empire. In the core empire, you don't have the hyperinflation. That's what he says, and he goes and he gives examples of history. He goes back, if you go back several years in his blog, he has articles where he talks about the coinage of Rome. He analyzes the coins and the money of Rome and Babylon. He goes through all these empires, and he says, this is the data I have. These are the historic records, and this is what I'm saying. And that's what he's saying. And that's kind of compelling, because if you say, wait a second, well, the U.S. is the core economy. If there's no hyperinflation in the dollar, right, then do I feel like I have to go out right now and buy precious metals? Maybe not. Maybe it's just because it's a sales pitch by some people. They want you to buy the metals right now. All fiat currencies fail in 40 years, so buy right now. Martin Armstrong says, well, yeah, you get your Zimbabwe's. Germany lost World War I. They aren't the core empire. But the British pound didn't hyperinflate. Yes, it lost 90% of its value over a period of time. It was the reserve currency. It lost its status. It lost value. But the pound is still around today. So that's what I'm saying there, is that people can shape their view of history by highlighting certain things and leaving out certain things. But wait a second. We did have hyperinflation in the empire. Remember the Revolutionary War with hyperinflation? That is true, but we weren't an empire yet. So there are examples of a nation or empire where before, when it was not a big player, had hyperinflation, like the Continental had hyperinflation in the U.S. Actually, there's hyperinflation in the Confederate dollar. What's the official word for that? But that wasn't the core empire. That was the Civil War, right? So there are examples of hyperinflations in the empire, but not the core empire and not the core currency, is what Martin Armstrong is saying. And as I read his stuff, I say, yeah, he's onto something, right? He's given historical record and analysis. So when I first started buying the precious metals, I didn't really come across this. I said, oh no, the dollar's doomed, the dollar's doomed. And as time went on and I came across this, right, I said, well, wait a second, maybe he's right. Actually, he is right. I think he's right. You know, obviously anything can happen. You know, nothing is for sure, but what he's saying makes a lot of sense. And what he's saying doesn't make you feel compelled to buy gold or silver right this second, right? If you listen to him and say, wait a second, the dollar's not going to collapse, so maybe, right, I'll buy on a dip instead of buying right this second, right? Maybe that people might say that. Of course, if you don't buy right this second, maybe you'll buy from a different bullion dealer. I don't know. He says at the end, don't worry, we are melting down. Well, actually, I would say worry, we are melting down. The worst of the worst is still unfolding. But he gives some really good analysis about how hyperinflation happens, why it happens. And a few years ago, a few of the traders who I listened to said, no, we're not going to have hyperinflation in the dollar or the U.S., and I was like, well, what they sounded convincing, but we have these other guys saying, yeah, every fiat currency collapses every 40 years, and yeah, well, now I can see, because some of these people who I listened to, they had their own research, but they didn't frame it in a manner. You see, when people say the dollar's going to collapse, they're being framed in the historic record. Because you have people writing books and doing videos saying, yes, historically, every fiat currency fails. The dollar is a fiat currency. So you have to address that point. You say, historically, no empire has had a hyperinflation collapse. Historically, the periphery nations have hyperinflation collapses. Or the losers of big wars have hyperinflation. But the core economy winners don't. So who's the core economy? Well, we have the Anglo-American banking empire. I don't know how you call it. Some people call it the New World Order. There's really no word, the grunch, Buckminster Fuller calls it the grunch of giants. There's no real new world because we have this corporatocracy. You have the military-industrial complex. We have the Federal Reserve. You have the banking sector. You have the corporate sector. You have the big governments. It's kind of this different moving parts. And when someone tries to say, aha, it's this one part, it seems that that's not how it is. It's all these different parts. It's the kind of the core empire. So I guess you got to follow the money to see the empire. But really, I think Martin Armstrong is right. And of course, if he's wrong, well, he could be wrong in some instances, but I think he puts his case forward effectively, and he has convinced me, and of course, I can be convinced of other things if new evidence comes in, but I think he is right here. So thanks for watching.